Hi, hey, hello, how are you? And welcome to my channel. Today I am giving you my February wrap up. These are all of the books that I read in the month of February. I ended up reading 9 books in February, so pat on the back because that's definitely better than last month. And I actually feel like I definitely could have read more than 9, but if you saw my second 24-hour reading challenge, I finished 5 books in 4 days, and that kind of slumped me out, to be honest. I felt really exhausted mentally from reading so much so quickly. So I intentionally took some of the books that I read in the latter half of the month a little bit slower just to give myself a break because I felt like I was going to get into a really bad slump if I didn't do that. So I read 9, which is pretty good. So far my record is 10. I think I read 10 in December. So I don't know, we'll see. Maybe I can do more than that in March. So to start off the month, I read The Last Word by Taylor Adams. This book is a thriller that came out in 2023. It's listed as a thriller slash mystery, but honestly, I would classify it not necessarily as horror, but like it's closer to horror in my opinion. Like I was talking to my spouse and they read horror all the time, and I was like, here are some of the things that are happening in this book. I feel like it's too much for me, but because I really struggle to DNF books, I was like, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna finish it anyway. And Josh was like, yeah, that does seem a little bit more like horror. That's kind of intense for just a thriller. And I was like, okay, that's what I thought. So this book starts off, there's a girl that reads this book on her Kindle. She thinks it's absolutely horrible and she gives it a bad review because why not? You know, like if you don't like a book, rate it badly. And then weird things start happening in the house that she's house sitting in. And she comes to the conclusion that she feels like the author of that book is coming after her. So yeah, it was a wild ride. It was a wild ride. And I will say I gave it 1 star. Quite frankly, I hated this book. Trigger warning, it's graphic, like it's gross. It's gory. And I don't know that I've ever read a book like that. I mean, like I've read fantasy books where there are war scenes where it gets gory or whatever, but this was like, no, this is like, there were a couple times where I was like, I'm gonna vomit. And so if that's something that upsets you or you're not a fan of, I would not recommend reading this. I feel like if I had heard that before I read this, I would have been like, but it's fine though, because it's only a thriller. But like, it crosses the line a little bit into like horror territory, in my opinion. And I just don't think that I was ready for that. So like, don't get me wrong, this book scared me. It terrified me, absolutely. I had nightmares. But I don't think that just because something can scare you like that means that it's a really good book. I gave it 1 star. And honestly, this book made me decide that I think I'm gonna take a little break from thrillers for a while, because this isn't like a big spoiler or anything, but like this is just a problem that I have with thrillers as a genre. Multiple twists. I don't want multiple twists. Give me 1 twist. But when you put in multiple twists at the end and you jerk me around, it gets to the point where there are no stakes. Nothing feels real because it feels like whatever just happened, oh, it's gonna be undone by another twist. Like I don't really care. It really pulls me out of the experience and makes me just get to the point where I'm like, when is this book gonna be done? I just want to finish this book. So I did not appreciate that. Yeah, straight up, this book reminded me of Riley Sager, and I do not like Riley Sager. If you've seen any of my other videos, I feel like I talk about him constantly and how much I don't like him or his writing. And a big reason for that is the multiple twists. It just bugs the heck out of me, to be honest. I can't stand it, and this book felt like that. And I really didn't like it. I mean, if I felt like, oh, I just didn't like it because it felt more horror and there was gory elements, but it's like objectively good, I would say that. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good. Everyone's talking about it and everyone else likes it, but I didn't like it. So 1 star. After that, we start getting into the books that I had picked from my February TBR video where I used my TBR jar for the first time. And let me just say, I read all 6 of those books. Like, that's kind of amazing. Most people don't do that just because it gets away from you. There are other things you end up wanting to read, but I made it a priority and I'm so proud of myself. I read all 6 of those books. So the first one that I read was Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. Guys, I cannot express how much I love this book. Like, I am obsessed. I actually made a Spotify playlist for it that I will put the link to below. You can go listen to it if you'd like. I'm not the type of person that can listen to music with lyrics while I'm reading, but I'll just listen to it at other times when I'm getting ready or whatever, and it just makes me think about the book, and I love it so much. So this was my first cowboy romance, and I was hesitant to try cowboy romances because I just didn't think that they were gonna be for me. But oh my god, it's for me. Like, I loved this book so much. It was so good. Also, the trope is my brother's best friend, and it's like a little bit like enemies to lovers, and like it's like a secret relationship for a little bit, and I can't even express how hard I fell for this book, like kind of immediately. It was so good. I am so happy that this book is a part of a series. The next one comes out, I think, on the 5th, so like real soon, and I'm going to be reading that as soon as I can. I'm very excited for it, but also I'm really excited for the 3rd book. I don't know when that's gonna come out, but I already know who that's gonna be about, thanks to the little like author's note that was at the end of the audiobook. And I'm so stoked for that. I absolutely cannot wait. I just love the main couple so much. Like, they're so good together. I didn't think that I was going to, but like I literally, this book had me hooked from the beginning. So good. Also, the female main character has ADHD, and I don't think that I've ever read a book where a female character has ADHD. And that was just like so refreshing and amazing to me because I have ADHD. And a lot of the ways that the author chose to show that in the character just felt like so legit. Like, they're things that I experience on the regular. And so I feel like I connected to the character in a way that like I haven't ever. And that just felt really amazing to me. So like, good job for the ADHD representation. I'm pretty sure the author has it too, so that's why it was like easy for her to write about. Anyway, yeah, Done and Dusted. 5 stars immediately. Love it. After that, I read The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. This is a romance book that came out in 2022. This is a book about a woman named Hannah. She's a professional bodyguard, and she has been hired to be a bodyguard for this super famous actor. In my mind, while I was reading this, I was seeing Glenn Powell. Like, that is who I would fan cast for the role of the male main character. And honestly, that just made the whole experience better. This is a romance, so you know what happens between them. Obviously, they're gonna fall for each other. I really liked this one. I thought that it was really sweet. I definitely liked it better than Hello Stranger. I read that in January, I believe, and that was really not my favorite. I didn't like that one. I didn't like how predictable it was. And obviously, this one is predictable too. It's a romance, but like in a different way, in a better way. And I just felt like the whole thing felt better to me. I liked the setting. I loved that like a lot of it takes place on the guy's like family ranch or farm or whatever. It felt really cute. I did give this one 4 stars, not 5, because it didn't give me that 5-star feel, but it was so good and I would recommend it. I thought it was really adorable. I will also say that I think that Catherine Center's dialogue can be a bit cheesy and like not in the best way, like a little bit cringe, a little bit unrealistic, but like that's fine. Oh, also for people that care about this, there's like virtually no spice in this. Done and Dusted, so spicy. Ooh, so spicy. But this one is not, so pick your poison. You like spicy, Done and Dusted. You don't, The Bodyguard. I will probably try a 3rd Catherine Center book. I do want to try one of her literary fiction books, but if I don't love it, I don't know that I'd read a 4th, to be honest. It feels like maybe this one is the fluke. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully I like the next one as much as I liked this one, but I think I've decided that I'm probably going to do like a 3 strikes you're out type deal with authors. If I read 3 of their books and I don't really like any of them, I'm probably not going to go in for a 4th. This was really cute. I rated it 4 stars, so I recommend this one. Then I read Lunar Love by Lauren Kung Jessen. This is a romance that came out in 2023. I have had this book pretty much since it came out, and I've been waiting to read it until February because I was like, I'll read it during Lunar New Year. That'll be perfect. Joke's on me. Most of this book takes place in the fall. So it does end at Lunar New Year, but that really didn't matter. Like, you could probably read it whenever. It's not like it gave intense fall vibes, but it does take place in the fall. So I could have read it whenever. This is this author's debut romance novel. It is about Olivia. She is taking over her family's traditional Chinese matchmaking business. They match people based off of their zodiac signs. She is struggling to keep the business above water, and she ends up falling in love with a guy along the way. This book was really cute. It was sweet. I liked hearing about the Chinese zodiacs. I actually don't know much about that, so that was interesting to learn about. I loved reading about Olivia's family dynamic, and I really liked the main guy, Bennett. He seemed really sweet and genuine the whole time. Again, this book didn't give me that 5-star feeling, so I rated it 4 stars, but I would recommend it. I thought it was really cute. After that one, I read Murder on the Links by Agatha Christie. This book was published in 1923. So I would keep that in mind if you're going to read this. I have read so many Agatha Christie books, and I feel like this was a pretty good one. There are some that just don't stand out to me, but I feel like this one was really good. I've had this on my physical TBR for quite a while, so I'm so glad that I was able to get this one done. This book is the second book in Agatha Christie's Poirot series. I've said before, I don't really think that it matters what order you read those in. They're kind of just all mysteries that have the same main character, so you don't need to read this one right after the first one. It doesn't really matter. You don't actually get any backstory on the character really in the first one, so I don't think that it totally matters. At some point, I would like to do a video where I kind of rank all of the Agatha Christie books that I've read, because I do think that if you've never read her before, there are definitely books that are better and ones that are not as good, and so I would love to put kind of a guide out there for people to be able to use if they'd like to get into her books. Anyway, a lot of the Poirot books are written from the point of view of Poirot's like kind of sidekick type character. I'm pretty sure that he has different sidekicks throughout the series, but this one is from Hastings' point of view. I've definitely read other ones from Hastings' point of view. And he's a little bit of a skeptic, which is kind of interesting because Poirot as a character is like a very confident guy. Like, he knows what he's doing. If you've ever watched the show Psych, the way that Sean, the main character, kind of like sees things and puts things together, and then at the end of each episode he's like, this is what happens, and he shows you the order that everything happened in and what everyone's motive is. That's kind of what Poirot does. Like, most of the time you don't really know what's going on. You might have your guesses, but you don't know what's going on through most of the book, and then at the end he'll be like, and this is the whole story, and you're like, oh, all the pieces fall into place. So in this one, Poirot gets a letter from somebody asking him to come to France. This rich guy requires his service, and then upon Poirot and Hastings showing up at this estate in France, they find that the man that wrote the letter to him is actually just been murdered. So then it's their job to figure out who murdered him and why. This one was a little bit tough to get into, I will say. I did listen to the audiobook for almost all of this book, and I do think that that really helped. Sometimes if you're having a hard time getting into a book at the start, I think that an audiobook really helps you just like power through, because it's like somebody else is reading it to you. But I am glad that I stuck with it because I did feel like this one was pretty good. I ended up giving it 4 stars. There's no spice, and this book takes place in the spring if you'd like to read it when it takes place. So Agatha Christie, The Murder on the Links, 4 stars. After that, I read Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. This is her first YA romance novel that came out last year in 2023. I was initially really nervous to read this book because I am not a fan of YA romance. I simply cannot handle it. But I do love Ali Hazelwood so much that I decided to give this one a shot. Also because I've seen a lot of reviews of this book, and a lot of people are saying, oh, it's not very YA, like I actually wouldn't suggest that somebody that's in that age range read it because it's not totally appropriate. And I was like, oh, okay, then it might be for me. And it was. I did feel like I could definitely handle this. It didn't feel cringy to me, which is how I feel about most YA romances. I did give this one 4 stars. It definitely didn't hold a candle to any of her adult romances for me. That is in large part because this book is about a character whose parents have split up. Her mom is in bad health. She's got younger sisters that rely on her, and she feels like she just has like the weight of the world on her shoulders. And then there's also lots of chess. She was kind of like a child chess prodigy, and then she gave it up when stuff happened. There's family drama, and now she's having to come back to it all these years later, and then she falls in love with a guy along the way too. Anyway, it was a little bit tough for me to read because, though I am not a chess prodigy, her family situation did really remind me a lot of what my high school and shortly thereafter years were like, so it felt a wee bit triggering. That's not anybody's fault. That's just a coincidence that it kind of mirrors things that have happened in my life, so it wasn't super fun to read for me. I did feel like I needed to take breaks for my mental health while I was reading this book, but if none of that applies to you, you're probably gonna like this book. Like, it was pretty good. 4 stars. I think the couple was cute. I have heard people say that they feel like the chess talk is kind of overwhelming, but if you read Ali Hazelwood, I don't think that it is. I think that the way that she talks about different branches of science in all of her adult STEM romances, I don't feel like the chess is more than the science talk, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't think that it really matters. I don't care about all of those branches of science. I also don't care about chess, but it didn't really matter. It didn't bother me at all. So yeah, 4 stars. It takes place in the summer, so I'd read it in the summer if you can, and then like, yeah, very minimal spice. After Check and Mate, I read The Power of Ritual. This is a nonfiction book. It came out in 2020. This book felt like one that would be really good to read slowly over time. So I'm honestly kind of sad that I rushed and read it as fast as I could within just a couple hours, because I don't feel like I was able to fully let everything that this author talks about like sink in for me. I had the impression, just because of the word ritual, that like this book was going to be kind of like Atomic Habits by James Clear vibes. I thought it was going to be like about your like day-to-day routines and stuff. And like, in a sense it is, but it's honestly kind of a spiritual book, which is really interesting because the author was raised atheist, and then he ended up going to Harvard Divinity School to learn like what he could glean from various religions, which I thought was just like such an interesting story. He does talk about that a little bit, but I did do my own research on him during reading the book because I'm just like, oh, what is this perspective of this guy? Like, where is he coming from? So yeah, because I feel like I read it too fast the first time, I definitely think that I would go back and read it again in a couple years, so I would definitely keep it. Like, I thought it was good. I give it 4 stars because I do feel like there are some parts where I was like, that's a little bit woo-woo for me. That's like a little bit out there. But I think that some of it is just my personality. Like, I'm a Virgo through and through, and so if it doesn't feel super logical to me, sometimes I have a harder time like getting on board with things. But I do think that this was a good book. I do think that it was well written. It's the first nonfiction book that I've read in a while. But I do think that it was good. After that, I read Breaking Dawn by Stephenie Meyer. I have officially finished the main Twilight saga. I haven't decided if I want to read the kind of like spin-off slash alternate universe books that go with the Twilight series, but that is a conversation for another day. The point is, I finished the core 4 books, and I'm very proud of myself. It feels good to have that series under my belt. It feels good to be able to say, yes, I enjoy all the Twilight movies, and I've read all the books. I did enjoy reading this book. I do feel like my biggest qualm with it is that the pacing is kind of weird. But if you have seen the movies, or you know, you've read this book, you know what it's about, you know that like the pacing is just weird because of the events that happen in this book. There are things that take place that happen way too fast, but that's kind of the point. And so the pacing just feels weird, and that's because it is. I don't know what else could be done about that. In January, I finished the Harry Potter series, and that book, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, and then Breaking Dawn, are both books that were split up into 2 movies, and they're both series where I saw the movies before I read the books. So I think that was interesting to be able to compare those two back to back, because with Harry Potter, it felt like, oh, they did a really good job putting pretty much everything that happens in the book into the two movies, because you're trying to take all of the content that you can out of that book so that it's enough for two movies. And I felt like that with this book too, but because the pacing is weird, I feel like I liked that it was split up into two movies, because it feels like everything happens at a more reasonable pace to be split up into two, whereas this book, like, you are going from the moment that it starts to the moment that it ends. You're like, wow, so much is happening. You need to just slow down. It's too much. So I actually did try to like slow down and read this a little bit slower, also because I felt like I was on the verge of a little slump. But yeah, I feel like both of the movies did a good job of sticking to the source material, and I did enjoy reading it for the most part, so I give it 4 stars. But I would say that Twilight as a series is a 5-star series. I absolutely love Twilight. And then last but certainly not least, I read Powerless by Lauren Roberts, and I absolutely loved it. I loved it. Like, I cannot express how much I loved it. And also how frustrated I am. Oh my gosh, I need to talk to somebody that's read this. Please comment, please comment if you've read this book. I need to talk to somebody. This was such an experience. I can honestly say that I don't think that I've felt reactions to a book this visceral since I read the ACOTAR series like 2 years ago. This hit different. This was something special. Like, the banter and the tension between Kai and Peyton is like almost none other I've never experienced, because guess what? There's actually no spice in this book. Wild, I know, right? And normally I like to know how much there's gonna be before I start a book, so I know what to expect. And I did it. I went into this blind. I knew that everyone liked the main couple, but I had no idea that, like, there's not even any spice. Like, that's how good the banter and the tension is. That it's like, oh, wow, I didn't even, like, you don't even notice, kind of. I can't deal. I love this book so much. I will read it again, and I am so upset that I have to wait till July for the second one. Are you joking? I know that there's gonna be like a novella / short story that's gonna be released in like April, but it doesn't even take place in the present day, so it won't move this story along. It'll just give like a little background. So like, I guess I'll have that to look forward to, but like, honestly, no. Like, I'm dying inside. I'm dying that I have to wait until July. Are you joking? This is a joke. I hate this. Also, fun fact, my copy is actually upside down and like backwards maybe. So because it's upside down and backwards, I was like, well, this copy is already a little funky. So I decided to annotate, and that was amazing. Why am I not annotating more books? I feel like I said a couple videos ago, like, I'm not really an annotation girly. I just like to keep my books like clean and nice, but like, no, this was so fun. Like, are you like, this is a great time. It did take a little bit longer to read it because I would be like listening to the audiobook and then I'd be like, wait, I need to stop and go highlight. But I highly recommend annotating this book if you're gonna read it. It's so good. So yeah, I love Powerless so much. I love Lauren Roberts. I feel like I'd read anything that she writes now. She's become an Instabuy author after one book. Love it, hate it, love to hate it. So good. 5 stars. This is a 6-star book, honestly. So those are all 9 of the books that I read in February. I feel like I had so many 4-star books, but I rated them 4 stars because I'm like, it's really good, but it just didn't get like a visceral reaction out of me. And I feel like Done and Dusted and definitely Powerless, like, they did that for me. Those are the standouts of the month. So I would highly suggest those if you are going to read any of the books that I've talked about this month. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, you can give it a like. If you like me and my channel, you can subscribe. You can hit that little bell icon. You can get notified every time that I post. So fun. And you can go into the description and you can follow me on all my social media links. I will also link the Done and Dusted playlist that I made, so you can go check that out if you want to. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I will see you next week. Bye!